Eleanor Chase moved through the glass doors of Singapore's Changi Airport as if she were a breeze, silent, deliberate, noticeable only if you cared to look. At 68 years old, she favored understatement over ostentation. Soft gray cashmere wrap draped over her shoulders, a simple strand of pearls peeking at her collarbone, and her tortoise-shell cane tapping a slow, confident rhythm across the polished marble floor. She arrived at the first-class lounge as though it were her living room, though to most of the staff and fellow travelers she appeared to be nothing more than another elderly passenger. From the moment she stepped inside, voices hushed. A polite courtesy extended to any guest in that hushed sanctuary. But no one offered more than a cursory glance. Flight crews in sharp navy blazers hurried by, leading their VIP clients toward gleaming champagne stations and mahogany-lined seating areas. A high-pouched executive with mirrored aviators strode past, phone clamped to his ear. Even the lounge attendants greeted her with the same neutral nod they gave to every other guest with a ticket stub. No one lingered. No one asked if she needed anything. No one noticed the faint crest embroidered into the lining of her wrap. The seal of Aerolux International. That's how Eleanor liked it. She liked being underestimated. It kept her free. She slowed to a measured pace, her cane clicking softly. Luggage scuttered behind her. No chauffeur here, just a well-worn rolling case that matched her calm understatement. Strangers seated on cream leather chairs continued their hushed conversations, faces illuminated by laptop screens. A mother hushed her toddler. A businessman flipped through a financial report. Still, none turned their gaze her way. Near the panoramic windows overlooking runway 2, she saw an empty seat. The late-model ergonomic chair sat beside a polished glass table, and the early morning sun streamed in, casting golden strips of light. Without a word, Eleanor eased herself down, smoothing her skirt. She tucked her cane across her lap and folded her hands, her posture straight and regal. The sound of her cane clicking against the side of the table was the only thing to betray her presence. Moments later, a young man approached. He wore a charcoal suit and the calm confidence of someone who expected deference. He offered a polite bow of his head. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, voice low. "I believe this seat belongs to me. Would you like to take mine instead?" Eleanor glanced at him, eyes warm but unreadable. She liked to let people think they were doing her a favor. "Thank you," she replied, her voice as soft as the cashmere wrap around her shoulders. "But I'm quite comfortable right here." He hesitated for a heartbeat, then managed a shy smile. "Very well, enjoy your flight." As he retrieved his case and walked away, an attendant whisked past, barely registering the exchange. The young man blended into the crowd of executives, bankers, and the occasional diplomat, all clothed in power suits and worldliness. Across the lounge, perched by the entrance to gate A7, Monica Blake scanned the room. At 41, she carried herself like a queen in her own kingdom. Slender, impeccably groomed, hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. As the lead flight attendant for Aerolux's flagship routes, she was used to reading people at a glance, identifying the wealthy, the entitled, the troublesome. She zeroed in on the gray-wrapped figure near the window. There was something off about that woman. Too poised, too self-assured to be someone who merely wandered into first-class territory by accident. Monica narrowed her eyes and buttoned her blazer tighter. This passenger would be her first stop once the announcement came through. Behind Monica, the chatter faded as the lounge's overhead monitor flickered. Boarding now. Aerolux flight LX717 to Los Angeles. Monica's name badge caught the light as she pivoted, striding toward the gate with all the authority of someone who knew those seats inside and out. She planned to be politely firm with whoever had taken what was not theirs. Eleanor heard the pilot's calm voice crackle over the PA system. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." She closed her eyes for a moment and allowed the hush of the lounge to settle around her. She'd flown this route dozens of times, but never had she felt so detached from the audience around her. Passengers rushed forward at her signal, eager to settle into bespoke leather seats halfway around the world, but Eleanor stayed put, as if she were conducting a symphony whose notes only she could hear. She glanced once more at her cane, the ivory handle carved with her family crest. Then she looked up, meeting Monica's gaze for an instant. Monica's lips pressed into a thin line. Whatever Monica was thinking, Eleanor could not tell. Yet, she simply sat, an island of calm amid the bustle, and that was precisely when Monica saw the first clue. The crest on the cane. In that tiny, seemingly insignificant detail, Monica realized this was no ordinary passenger. But it was already too late. The young man, the executives, even the lounge staff had all moved on. Only Monica lingered, and Eleanor's serene composure never wavered. She remained seated, her eyes watching Monica with a quiet intensity. No one else noticed the shift, but Monica knew. In that heartbeat, she had just disrupted something far greater than a wrongly seated traveler. And in that moment, the stage was set for a reckoning the likes of which no one in that lounge or on that flight would ever forget. Monica Blake stood at the boarding gate like a sentinel guarding sacred ground. The polished steel arch above her read Gate A7, first-class boarding, and behind her, passengers in crisp suits and silk scarves queued eagerly. The buzz of excited chatter mingled with the occasional clink of champagne glasses being set aside, yet Monica's attention locked onto one figure. Eleanor Chase, still seated by the window, cane in hand, calm, as if she were reading a newspaper in her own living room. The rest of the world blurred. Monica saw only the gray-haired woman, whose serenity so sharply contrasted with the humidity of suspicion. Monica felt rising in her chest. Clasping her flashlight in one hand, Monica swept her gaze over Eleanor's boarding pass. She pressed the beam across the laminated paper, watching the light dance over the gold-embossed First Class label and the tiny Aerolux International emblem. Everyone knew those passes never forgave mistakes. Most passengers simply showed them, nodded, and passed. But not Eleanor. Monica's lips curved in a polite but predatory smile as she stepped forward, her voice pitched just loud enough for the line behind her to hear. "Ma'am," she began, measuring every word, "this doesn't look like a valid first-class ticket. Are you sure you're in the right place?" Eleanor lifted her chin, her pale blue eyes meeting Monica's with unflinching calm. She tapped her cane against the floor twice before responding, voice smooth and clear. "I'm quite certain, thank you." Monica's smile slipped into a smirk. She clicked her flashlight off and on again, as though the pass might magically transform in the brighter glow. Passengers behind Eleanor shifted uncomfortably, aware that this wasn't standard protocol. An older couple exchanged worried glances. A suited executive fidgeted with his boarding pass, pretending not to listen. But Monica was on a mission. She held out her hand for the pass, then flipped it over and over, scowling as if she'd discovered something new each time. "You realize people have tried to sneak into this cabin with counterfeit passes," Monica said, her tone laced with false concern. "I'd hate for you to cause a delay." Eleanor's fingers curled around her cane's handle. She stood slowly, every movement graceful, deliberate. The line froze, jaws slack, as Monica leaned in to speak more loudly, ensuring the entourage of passengers could hear. "Let me see that again," she ordered. "I need to scan it under the overhead light. We wouldn't want any confusion." By now, a small circle of onlookers had formed. Monica raised her flashlight high, framing Eleanor's face in stark contrast, shadowed eyes and tense jaw. Eleanor took a breath, tapping the heel of her cane in a soft staccato. She met Monica's glare without flinching. Then, quietly but firmly, she said, "You've scanned it twice. I've had this seat assigned for months." Monica paused, feigning indignation. "Well?" "It doesn't look right. The font is slightly off, and the hologram doesn't spring to life." She jabbed a finger at the pass. "I've got to be sure. We've had some incidents lately." Behind her, a young mother clutched her child's hand, eyes wide. A businessman in a crisp navy suit swallowed hard. The tension crackled like static between them. Eleanor lifted her cane in a single, smooth motion, gently tapping it on the floor to draw Monica's full attention. Her voice, low but unmistakable, carried through the hush. "You've just made a grave mistake, Ms. Blake." The shock in Monica's eyes was half annoyance, half surprise. She snapped her flashlight shut, stepping back as if stung. Passengers murmured. A few cleared their throats. The executive who'd been fingering his pass now met Eleanor's gaze and nodded suddenly, as though acknowledging a shift in power. Even the lounge attendants paused in their duties, sensing the moment had changed. Monica swallowed, straightening her uniform. She jabbed at her earpiece, pretending to radio security. Eleanor, however, remained perfectly still. She did not call for assistance. She did not raise her voice. Instead, she let the soft echo of that tapping cane reverberate through the gate area one last time. In that stillness, every passenger felt it, the raw authority of a woman who needed no backup, whose quiet dignity carried more weight than a dozen security officers. As Monica hesitated, the boarding announcement crackled again. "Now boarding first-class passengers for flight LX 717 to Los Angeles. Please have your boarding passes ready." Monica glanced at her list, at the pass in her hand, then at the composed figure before her. The air around them hummed with anticipation. Eleanor reclaimed her cane, lifted her boarding pass, and turned toward the jet bridge. As if nothing had happened. The line fell behind her in respectful silence. Monica trailed at the back, flashlight clenched at her side, face ashen. A single passenger, a diplomat wearing a discreet lapel pin, leaned over to the executive beside him and whispered, "She owns this airline, didn't you know?" The executive nodded, an amused smile creeping across his face. Monica's jaw tightened. She knew now that this was no simple ticket check. She had crossed a line she couldn't undo. Eleanor paused at the entrance to the jet bridge, glanced over her shoulder, and offered Monica a slight, knowing nod. Then she walked on. Monica remained standing in the gate area, surrounded by first-class passengers, yet more isolated than ever. In that moment, the game had changed. What began as a routine check had become the spark for something far larger. A reckoning that would unfold at 34,000 feet, high above any rules Monica thought she controlled. And as Eleanor's calm silhouette disappeared around the corner, every passenger realized boarding this flight would mean witnessing a power they had never seen in action. And Monica Blake was about to learn that underestimating someone like Eleanor Chase came at a steep price. Passengers were filing through the steel-framed doorway into the jet bridge when Monica Blake made her move. She'd spent the last 30 seconds replaying the look on Eleanor Chase's face, that cool, unflappable gaze, as if Eleanor weren't about to board a flight, but rather preside over one. Monica's pride stung. She'd built her reputation on flawless first-class service, spotting trouble before it even arrived. But here was Eleanor, cane in hand, ticket in plain view, daring to sit where she didn't belong. Monica stepped forward, her posture strict, voice carrying just enough edge to draw attention. "Excuse me," she snapped, extending her hand for Eleanor's boarding pass. She flipped it over with a practiced flick of her thumb, eyes narrowing. "I'm going to need to see that under better light." She jabbed her flashlight toward the paper. scanned the gold lettering, the embossed logo, then clicked it off with a curt tap. Eleanor stood slowly, folding her wrap over one arm and setting her boarding case aside. Her smile was polite, almost serene. "You've looked at it twice," she said softly. "It's genuine." Monica's lips twisted. She reached out and, deliberately, brushed Eleanor's hand away. Too roughly. The pass fluttered to the floor, and the tip of Eleanor's cane struck the tile with a sharp crack. In that instant, the cane snapped at its midsection, ivory handle tumbling one direction, the shattered shaft clattering another. A gasp rippled through the boarding line. Monica froze, chest heaving. She hadn't intended to break the woman's cane, only to intimidate her. But now the spectacle was complete. A first-class passenger, her cherished cane in pieces, standing before the crowd Monica had gathered. She searched Eleanor's face, expecting outrage, but saw only quiet disappointment. Monica glanced at the broken shaft on the ground, then back at Eleanor. "That was an accident," she began, but her voice wavered. "Next time, read your ticket before stepping up here." A few travelers muttered, some in sympathy, others in thinly veiled judgment. No one moved to help Eleanor. Monica straightened, squared her shoulders, and delivered the line she'd rehearsed. "Look, I'm just enforcing the rules. We can't have people sneaking into first class." Eleanor bent at the waist to retrieve her cane's pieces. She did it with such calm precision that a hush fell over the crowd. As she picked up the ivory handle, she placed it gently on the shattered wood, her fingers brushing the cracks. Then, with an effortless grace, she straightened and looked directly at Monica. Her voice was low, measured, yet every word knocked the breath out of Monica's chest. "You've just made the gravest mistake of your career." Monica's throat went dry. She tried to step around Eleanor to usher her forward, but found her feet frozen. Eleanor's gaze held the authority of someone who didn't need a uniform or title to command respect. Monica realized, in that instant, that the quiet dignity she'd belittled was more powerful than any badge. Behind Monica, the gate attendants hovered, uncertain whether to intervene. The line of VIP travelers wavered, torn between stepping forward to help and waiting for Monica to regain control. A young diplomat in a crisp suit exchanged a glance with an older businessman, both silently urging Monica to apologize. But Monica's pride flared hotter than her fear. She dropped her flashlight, letting it clatter on the floor, and managed a brittle laugh. "Please, step aside," she barked, voice cracking. "I need to clear the way." Eleanor didn't move. She simply watched Monica with an unreadable expression. Then she slipped her hand into her wrap, withdrew a slender tablet, and tapped the screen. Monica's eyes flicked toward the device. Something flashed there, a confidential interface Monica recognized from her mandatory staff training. Priority protocol. Owner on board. A sharp breath caught in Monica's throat as the boarding announcement crackled overhead. "All first-class passengers, please proceed to the aircraft." Eleanor offered Monica a single, small nod. Then she turned, cane held in two hands, and began down the jet bridge. Travelers moved aside for her, patting heads and nodding respectfully. Monica watched, heat rising in her cheeks, her uniform feeling suddenly like the wrong costume. As Eleanor's silhouette vanished into the plane's doorway, Monica stooped to pick up the broken cane pieces, her hands trembling. She tucked the fragments into her service apron, but the crack was unmistakable. It mirrored the fracture forming inside her, between her arrogance and the realization that she had misjudged someone with the power to unmake her world. She followed Eleanor aboard, voice unsteady when she spoke into her headset. "Gate A7, this is Blake. I need to override boarding sequence. There's an incident." She swallowed hard, then added under her breath, "God help me. What have I done?" The plane's doors closed behind her. In that sealed cabin, Monica would soon learn exactly how grave her mistake had been, and how deeply its impact would echo through every mile of sky they crossed together. Monica Blake forced herself to keep her expression neutral as she swept aside the rope barrier and stepped into the jet bridge. Behind her, a chorus of polite "thank you" and "excuse me" drifted forward, mingling with the hiss of the cabin door closing behind the last passenger. She steadied her breath, squared her shoulders, and allowed herself a tight nod before turning to face Eleanor Chase. Eleanor halted at the threshold, cane in one hand, boarding pass in the other. For a moment, the flight attendant in Monica saw nothing but a lone, elderly woman. But Monica knew better. She'd verified the pass twice under bright LED lights, and it was undeniably real. Yet every fiber of Monica's pride bristled at the thought of letting that woman take her place in 1A. "Welcome aboard, ma'am," Monica said, voice smooth as the polished wood veneer that lined the jet bridge walls. She took Eleanor's arm in a manner that felt officious, more escort than assistance, and guided her past the threshold into the first-class cabin. The moment Eleanor stepped inside, the world shifted. Warm golden lighting glowed over cream-colored leather seats, each one cradling a plush pillow embroidered with the Aerolux crest. Overhead bins curved in perfect arches, and the soft hum of the engines felt like a distant lullaby. Attendants in crisp navy uniforms moved like clockwork, offering champagne flutes and fruit plates to the dozen or so VIP passengers already settled. Monica heard muted gasps as the champagne cart rolled by. Business magnates from Frankfurt, tech entrepreneurs from Seoul, and a hush of celebrity entourages, they all paused. Monica pressed on, determined that Eleanor, despite her ticket's validity, would feel nothing but the same thin indifference she'd shown before boarding. "Please, right this way," Monica said, her words brisk. She led Eleanor down the narrow aisle, passing seat after seat, each occupied by someone accustomed to unrivaled luxury. Conversation flickered to silence, and eyes tracked the unfolding scene. Someone in row 1D, a diplomat in a tailored gray suit, raised his eyebrows. Another passenger, a Japanese investor, set aside a financial dossier and leaned forward, curiosity ignited. Monica stopped at the very first seat, 1A, directly across from a large panoramic window. The seat's backrest button glowed, promising a fully flat bed at cruise altitude. Monica swept her arm toward it. "Your seat, ma'am," she announced, then stepped back to signify completion of her task. Eleanor's gaze followed the motion before she lowered herself onto the plush cushion. She lifted one slender hand to adjust the seatbelt, then rested the cane upright against the armrest. There was no rush, no tremor, only a serene command that seemed to still the cabin's atmosphere. Monica turned to retrieve the boarding pass scanner from her belt, but something caught the corner of her eye. A junior attendant, Haley Tran, stood just a few steps behind, clipboard in hand, scrolling through the digital manifest on a tablet. Monica's pulse quickened. Haley's eyes flicked from the screen to Eleanor, widening slightly, then darted back to the display. Monica moved closer, peering over Haley's shoulder. "Everything all set?" Monica asked, keeping her tone light. Haley cleared her throat, voice low. "Yes, ma'am. Everything is confirmed." Her eyes lingered on a line of text. "Eleanor Chase, primary shareholder, 64%, Aerolux International." Monica's heart lodged in her throat. She hadn't expected anyone else to notice, or if they did, to say anything. But Haley's reaction was unmistakable. A quick intake of breath, a tightening at the corners of her mouth, the subtle shift of her posture that signaled both shock and deference. Monica swallowed, forcing her gaze back to Eleanor. She reminded herself this was protocol. Verify the pass, escort the passenger, and then move on to the rest of her duties. She tucked the scanner back into her belt and gave Haley a curt nod. "Thank you," she said, voice steadier than she felt. Haley gave a barely perceptible bow and glided away, leaving Monica alone with Eleanor and the dozen or so passengers whose attention had returned to their own conversations, though their sideward glances lingered. Monica approached Eleanor's seat again, offering a small smile, the kind she reserved for VIP guests. "Can I get you anything? Water? Champagne? A menu?" Eleanor looked up, eyes calm as still water, and shook her head. "No, thank you." Her voice was polite, but there was a crispness to it, like a well-timed piano key that commanded the room without volume. Monica nodded, suppressed her rising panic, and pivoted to continue her rounds. As she passed, Eleanor's gaze followed her, not with accusation, but with a measured curiosity that made Monica's steps falter. The subtle weight of being watched pressed on Monica's back like a physical force. In the rows behind them, passengers whispered among themselves. A woman in row 1C, a European court official, exchanged a knowing look with the diplomat in 1D. Soft murmurs of shareholder and owner rippled through the cabin. Monica's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She reminded herself these rumors could be false, easily dismissed by a manager in the galley. Yet even as monetary whispers circulated, Eleanor simply sat, hands folded over her lap, her posture perfect. She was the picture of unassuming power. No bluster, no entitlement, just presence. Monica realized that all the years she'd spent perfecting her role, anticipating every need, curating every detail, had never prepared her for this. Serving a woman who wielded real authority in silence. Monica gripped the edge of a drinks trolley as she passed and took a steadying breath. She reminded herself of protocol, of loyalty to Aerolux, of her own impeccable record. She would not falter. She would not let this passenger unnerve her. But deep in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered, "You did break her cane. You did question her ticket. You did humiliate her." That voice grew louder with every click of the cane's handle by Eleanor's side, a rhythm that echoed through Monica's conscience. Finishing her service round, Monica turned and caught a final glimpse of Eleanor through the cabin's soft lighting. Eleanor's lips curved into the slightest half-smile, and Monica felt it like a call to account. She knew now that this flight would not be like any other she'd worked. Somewhere in the heart of this silent cabin, a reckoning was waiting, and Monica Blake, Starflight attendant in her own right, would have to face it head-on, serving not just coffee and water, but the truth of her own mistake. The first-class cabin hummed with quiet conversation as Evelyn settled into her 1A seat. Soft amber lighting bathed the cream leather upholstery, and the faint whoosh of pressurized air was nearly soothing. Monica Blake drifted up and down the aisle, offering menus, topping off champagne flutes, and exchanging polite smiles with the dozen or so VIP guests on board. She'd just escorted Eleanor Chase to her seat, confirmed the pass under Haley's watchful eye, and mentally prepared to move on, until a quiet voice stopped her in her tracks. Monica turned toward the rear galley, where Haley Tran hovered with a tablet clutched in her arms. Haley's cheeks were just starting to flush, an unusual hue beneath her flawless makeup. Monica raised an eyebrow and stepped down a row to meet her. Haley leaned in, glancing furtively at the nearest passengers before lowering her voice to a whisper. "Ma'am, I just pulled up her profile again. She's listed as the primary shareholder, 64% of Aerolux." Her words trembled with disbelief. Monica's heart thudded in her chest. "What?" she managed, though her tone was pitched too loudly, drawing two curious glances from a pair of bankers in row 1C. She motioned Hailey farther away, toward the galley door. and closed the half-open curtain between them. Haley's tablet screen glowed in the dim corridor light. Monica saw the line of text. Eleanor Chase, primary shareholder, 64%, Aerolux International. Monica swallowed hard, her voice dropping. "Are you sure?" Haley nodded, swallowed again, then slipped the tablet into her apron pocket. "I'm positive. I double-checked the corporate directory. You know, the one we're not supposed to access mid-flight, but..." Her voice broke. "I thought you already knew." Monica's throat tightened. She stared at the seam of the curtain as if hoping the words would peel away. Her hands trembled slightly, just enough that she nearly knocked over a stack of linens in the galley. She caught them in time, pressing a palm to the cool metal counter. In the cabin beyond the curtain, a voice crackled over the intercom. "Cabin crew, please prepare for departure." Monica blinked as if waking from a daze. She straightened her uniform coat, smoothing the lapel. "Right," she whispered to Haley, her voice steadier than she felt. "Finish up the service run. I'll handle this." Haley hesitated, searching Monica's face. Finally, she gave a small nod and slipped back into the cabin, leaving Monica alone in the narrow galley corridor. Monica pressed her back against the cold wall, mind racing. Eleanor Chase. The unassuming old woman she'd prided herself on mastering protocol controlled a majority of the airline itself. The woman she'd humiliated, broken her cane, and forced out of her seat was, in fact, the power behind every gate, every flight attendant, and every plush cushion on this jet. Her chest tightened as she replayed the encounter, the way Eleanor's eyes had held her steady after the cane snapped, the poised calm with which she'd collected herself. Monica forced herself to draw a slow breath, inhaling and exhaling against the hum of the engines. A dozen emotions collided inside her. Shock, disbelief, mounting dread. She recalled the countless hours she'd spent training, adopting every courtesy and ritual expected of a first-class flight attendant. Not once had she imagined that the person she deemed unworthy was the one who held her career in their hands. Monica pushed off the wall and walked back into the cabin. Passengers continued their quiet conversations, sipping Dom Perignon and skimming stock reports on tablets. But every face she passed seemed to register a silent shift in status. An elderly couple in row 1B exchanged a look that said, "She's the boss." The diplomat in 1C lowered his newspaper just enough for Monica to glimpse the Aerolux annual report spread across his lap. At Eleanor's seat, Monica knelt, her uniform wrinkle-free but her composure fraying. She locked eyes with Eleanor briefly, only for half a second, but that moment held the weight of every misstep she'd made. She swallowed hard. "Ma'am," she said quietly, offering the occasional bottled water with a trembling smile. "Is there anything else you need before takeoff?" Eleanor's gaze softened, as if she recognized Monica's inner turmoil. She shook her head gently. "No, thank you. I have everything I need right here." Monica nodded, brushing invisible lint off her skirt. She rose and backed away, regaining a fragment of professional poise. But beneath the surface, she fought the urge to collapse into herself. She resumed her walk down the aisle, forcing a practiced smile for the next passenger, even though her mind was a whirlwind of regrets. Reaching the galley, Monica found Haley waiting, hands folded. Haley's eyes were compassionate, tinged with concern. Monica lifted a finger, as though demanding a moment of silence, and then tapped her lips, signaling discretion. Haley nodded solemnly and returned to her station. Monica stepped into the galley's small service elevator and pressed the button for the cockpit. The doors hissed shut, and she found herself surrounded by the faint scent of coffee grounds and aluminum trays. She steadied her reflection in the polished metal wall. Her own face, pale and tense under the fluorescent strip above. Minutes later, the cockpit doors swung open. Monica stepped inside, and Captain Johnson gave her a curt nod. "What's going on?" he asked, glancing at the co-pilot. Swallowing, Monica spoke in a low voice that trembled with unspoken emotion. I just learned Ms. Chase isn't just a passenger. She owns the airline, 64%. She's the majority shareholder." She watched the captain's jaw tighten. Before he could respond, the call tone chimed on his comm panel. Captain Johnson pressed a button. "This is Captain Johnson." The screen blinked to life. On it appeared the face of Gabriel Knox, Aerolux's CEO, crisp suit behind him, expression unreadable. "Captain," Knox said, voice flat. "I've been notified of an incident. I trust you know Eleanor Chase is on board." The captain exhaled. "Yes, sir. We just confirmed her identity." Knox's gaze flicked to Monica standing behind Johnson, uniform immaculate but shoulders slumped. "Very well. Initiate Protocol 9 immediately. The entire crew is to be held to her command from this point forward. Inform all attendants. And Captain, good luck." The line went dead. Monica stared at the blank screen, her pulse pounding like a locomotive. She turned to Captain Johnson, who met her eyes with a look that was part apology, part steely resolve. As Monica backed out of the cockpit, she felt the full weight of what lay ahead. Protocol 9 meant that every decision, every service, every instruction on this flight would revolve around fulfilling Eleanor's unspoken expectations. The irony stung. The woman she'd scorned was now the center of power, and Monica Blake, the consummate professional, had no choice but to obey. Stepping back into the cabin, Monica realized this was more than a flight. It was her reckoning. And under the watchful eyes of the woman she had once humiliated at 34,000 feet, her career and her pride hung in the balance. Monica Blake barely registered the soft chime of the cockpit intercom before she heard her name. "Ms. Blake, please report to the flight deck immediately." The voice belonged to Captain Johnson. Calm, clipped, leaving no room for argument. She was halfway down the aisle, tending to a VIP's wine glass, but her heart stuttered. Gathering her composure, she excused herself to Haley with a quick nod and set off toward the cockpit door, the hush of first class falling away behind her. As she stepped into the narrow entryway, Monica felt the temperature drop. The cockpit, usually alive with the gentle chatter of pilots and the steady whir of instruments, was unnervingly silent. Captain Johnson sat at the left seat, co-pilot Ramirez at the right, both staring at a tablet screen mounted above the control panel. The glow of the display painted their faces in cool blue light. "Ms. Blake," Captain Johnson greeted without looking up. "Have a seat." He motioned to the observer's jump seat just behind him. Monica perched on the edge, uniform stiff, grip tightening on the armrest. A second chime sounded and a new window flickered onto the tablet. Gabriel Knox's face framed by the CEO's sleek office backdrop. Monica's breath caught. She'd only seen him on occasional training videos, never live. Gabriel Knox's expression was grave. "Captain, unhand that lightsaber, Blake," he began wryly, but the humor didn't reach his eyes. "I trust you're aware of the incident with Miss Chase." Captain Johnson nodded. "Yes, sir. We've confirmed her identity as Eleanor Chase, primary shareholder, 64% controlling interest." Knox leaned forward. "Good. Then you know what Protocol 9 entails." He tapped the screen and a scrolling list appeared. Protocol 9, Owner Onboard Incident Review / Unconditional Deference Required. Monica's pulse thundered in her ears. She'd heard whispers of priority protocol during initial staff training, an obscure clause granting an owner absolute authority during flight, but she'd never imagined it activated mid-air. Gabriel's voice cut through her panic. "Monica," he said softly but firmly, From this moment until we land, all crew operations fall under Ms. Chase's direction. You and your fellow attendants will execute her requests without question." Monica swallowed. "Sir, is that—" "I'm not asking permission," Knox interrupted. "I'm issuing an order. Enforce it. And Captain, keep me updated." With a subtle nod, Knox faded from the screen, leaving the cockpit awash in silence once more. Ramirez exhaled, breaking the tension. "Well, that's unsettling." His fingers danced over the controls, raising the cabin intercom channel. Captain Johnson flicked a switch and spoke clearly. "Cabin crew, this is Captain Johnson. Protocol 9 has been activated. All requests from Ms. Chase are to be treated as direct orders. Acknowledge and comply immediately." Monica felt every eye on her as she stepped back into the cabin. The overhead panels chimed in unison with the captain's announcement, and a ripple of murmurs swept through the passengers. She brushed past the stunned faces, executives, diplomats, entertainers, each processing the notion that the woman they'd just seen escorted to her seat now held absolute sway over the flight. She paused at Eleanor's seat. The ivory handle of the newly repaired cane rested by her side, a silent testament to events gone by. Monica knelt, voice trembling despite herself. "Ma'am, will you be needing anything at this time?" She fought to keep her tone even, professional. Eleanor looked up, her calm blue eyes reflecting the golden cabin lights. "I'll have a glass of that Chardonnay, please. And the salmon salad, just the way Clara prepared it." She nodded slightly toward the aisle, where Monica recalled seeing Haley meticulously arranging entree plates moments before. Monica nodded and retreated down the aisle, adrenaline propelling her forward. She found Haley restocking the tray cart near row 2. "Chardonnay and salmon salad, first-class presentation," she ordered, voice low. Haley's eyes widened at Monica's crisp, obedient tone. "Right away." Monica guided the cart back to Eleanor. Each passenger she passed watched her movements with subtle intensity, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed satisfaction. A financier from Hong Kong leaned forward to whisper to his companion, "That's the owner's directive. Every attendant will answer to her now." At Eleanor's seat, Monica presented the wine as though it were a chalice, sliding the salad onto the little teak tray with exaggerated care. Eleanor accepted both with a serene nod. "Thank you," she said softly. Monica stood back, chest tight with relief that at least this request was simple. But as she rounded the cart to continue regular service, she felt the weight of every pair of eyes. Each glance reminded her of the cane break, the humiliation in Gate A7, the fury she'd sparked. Protocol 9 had transformed her role from gracious host into something more subservient, and the transition stung. She continued down the aisle, delivering trays and refilling glasses under the ever-present hum of the engines. Every time she glanced toward the cockpit, she imagined Knox's watchful stare on the monitor. Each time she passed row after row of passengers, she wondered, were their lives ever so publicly redirected? Would they forgive her, or did they now see her as the cautionary tale? An hour passed in a blur of compliance. Monica barely recognized herself. The flight attendant who once led every interaction now followed directions she'd never received. But she obeyed. She would learn. She had to learn. By the time the seatbelt sign flickered off, Monica found herself standing behind Eleanor's seat again, ready to take the next order. She cleared her throat. "Ma'am, is there anything else I can do for you?" Eleanor smiled, a subtle curve of her lips that held both warmth and an unspoken challenge. "Not at the moment," she replied, "but thank you for your prompt service." Then, leaning back, she closed her eyes and took a delicate sip of her wine, cane resting gracefully in her lap. Monica exhaled, her shoulders sagging ever so slightly. She straightened, squared her shoulders again, and moved on to the next guest. The quiet click of the cane echoed in her mind, an echo of authority she could neither break nor ignore. At 34,000 feet, Monica Blake learned what it meant to be truly at someone's command, and she understood that from now on, every decision would hinge on one thing: Eleanor Chase's silent will. The rest of the flight stretched before her like a schoolroom test she couldn't fail, proof that in the sky, as on the ground, true power often spoke in hushed tones. Monica Blake had barely set down the last pair of empty champagne flutes in the galley when her name crackled through the headset. "Ms. Blake, please report to the flight deck immediately." The call was calm, precise, an unambiguous order from Captain Johnson. She paused, heart pounding. In all her years as lead flight attendant on Aerolux's most prestigious routes, she had never been summoned to the cockpit mid-flight. Monica swallowed hard, exchanged a furtive glance with Haley Tran, then brushed a lock of hair behind her ear and slipped through the narrow corridor toward the cockpit door. Stepping inside felt like moving into a different dimension. The cabin's warm, ambient glow gave way to the cooler, functional lighting of the flight deck. The usual banter between pilots was gone. The steady hum of avionics beeped along a backdrop of near silence. Captain Johnson sat at the controls, eyes fixed on the instrument panel. In the co-pilot's seat, Ramirez's face was drawn, his normally relaxed posture now rigid. Monica's polished shoes clicked against the metal floor as she approached. "Captain?" she began, her voice quiet. "You called for me." He nodded without turning around. "Yes, Ms. Blake. Close the door, please." The tension in his voice was unmistakable. Monica obeyed, sealing the cockpit from the rest of the aircraft. She found herself facing the two pilots, her uniform immaculate, but her composure suddenly fragile. Before she could speak again, the flight deck's monitor flickered, and the image of Gabriel Knox, Aerolux's CEO, appeared. His suit was impeccable, his expression unreadable. Behind him, the sleek lines of a corporate boardroom hinted at the authority he wielded. "Monica Blake," Knox began, voice steady. "I've reviewed the incident report. You're well aware of the situation with Ms. Chase." Monica forced herself to stand straight, hands clasped in front of her. "Yes, sir," she managed, her throat tight. Knox continued, "Eleanor Chase is more than a passenger. She controls 64% of this airline. You just broke her cane and publicly humiliated her at the gate. Do you understand the gravity of that mistake?" Monica's breath caught. She opened her mouth to apologize, but the words lodged in her throat. I didn't realize," she stammered, but Knox cut her off with a raised hand. "I'm not interested in excuses," he said, his tone growing harder. "I'm interested in consequences." He tapped the screen and a document titled Disciplinary Action Protocol 9 scrolled into view. Monica recognized the memo from her initial training, a seldom-used clause granting extraordinary measures when an owner's dignity was compromised. Knox fixed her with a steady gaze. "Under Protocol 9, you're to be publicly disciplined mid-flight, before Ms. Chase and every passenger in first class. You will read your own suspension order," he said, voice icy. "Then, effective immediately, you will hand over your duties to the junior attendant, and you will occupy an economy seat for the remainder of the flight." Monica's pulse thundered. She'd imagined all sorts of outcomes, an offhand reprimand, maybe a talking to by a line manager after landing, but this felt like her world unraveling in real time. She fought a wave of vertigo, slumping against the bulkhead for support. Captain Johnson cleared his throat. "Ma'am, plans for compliance will be sent to cabin crew now. Prepare yourself." Monica straightened, forcing her shoulders back. She licked her dry lips, "Sir, may I at least speak to Ms. Chase first? Apologize personally." Knox's eyes narrowed. "No. The apology will happen in due course, and the reading of the order is your first act of accountability. Do you understand?" Monica nodded once, stiffly. "Yes, sir." The screen went dark. Ramirez exchanged a glance with Captain Johnson before turning back to his controls. Monica exhaled, the sound loud in the confined space. She pressed a hand to her heart, trying to tame the racing drumbeat within her chest. "Mrs. Blake," Captain Johnson said softly, "you have 5 minutes before we publish to the cabin. I'll monitor the intercom channel, just be ready." Monica swallowed the lump in her throat and plastered on a mask of professional calm. "Understood." She inched toward the cockpit door. "One more thing, Captain. The cane. I can replace it after landing." He shook his head. "It's been logged as evidence. You'll handle that on the ground. Now go." His voice held no trace of warmth, only the authority of someone who knew her fate was already sealed. The cockpit doors slid open and Monica stepped back into the first-class cabin. The mood had shifted palpably. The soft hum of conversation had gone still. A hush fell as the flight attendants, Haley included, exchanged uneasy looks. Monica's stomach twisted as she caught sight of Eleanor, seated exactly where she'd left her, cane mended but now a silent symbol of all that had transpired. Monica lifted her chin, squared her shoulders, and tapped her headset. "Cabin crew, this is Captain Johnson." Her voice quavered once, but she fought to steady it. "Protocol 9 is now in effect. I will deliver the disciplinary announcement momentarily. You are to comply with Ms. Chase's directives without question." A ripple of surprise and murmurs rippled through the cabin. Monica felt every pair of eyes on her as she made her way to the front. Passengers shifted in their seats, some with sympathetic glances, others with haughty smirks. A fashion editor in row 1C tapped her screen, likely tweeting already. Monica swallowed hard, each step toward the midpoint of the cabin echoing like a drumbeat of judgment. She reached the discreet microphone panel embedded in the ceiling. Clearing her throat, she paused, caught between pride and panic. Ella the C's words, her orders, and the memory of the snapped cane all collided in her mind. Gathering what remained of her courage, she averted her eyes momentarily, then looked straight ahead. Monica pressed the talk bar and spoke, voice clear, carrying through the hush like a verdict. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your head flight attendant, Monica Blake. Effective immediately, I am suspended from duty for the duration of this flight under Protocol 9. I will now relinquish my station and pass all responsibilities to Ms. Haley Tran. I apologize for my actions earlier and regret any distress caused. Thank you for your understanding." The cabin remained silent. Shock and compassion mingled in equal measure. Monica released the button and let the echo of her words settle. She straightened her uniform one last time, then removed her name badge and unhooked her headset, placing both in her apron pocket. The reality of her actions crashed over her like turbulence. A public confession, not under the bright lights of a disciplinary hearing, but in the quiet intimacy of 34,000 feet of air. Monica turned and gave a curt nod to the crew behind her. Haley's eyes glistened with empathy as she stepped forward to accept the reins. The other attendants offered polite bows, no words, but their expressions conveyed shared sorrow and respect. Eleanor watched the entire exchange without moving. Her gaze was steady, her posture unchanged. Monica met her eyes briefly. No anger, no gloating, only a calm that resonated deeper than any apology. Monica felt tears prick at her eyes. She gave a small, respectful incline of her head to Eleanor, then turned away and walked down the aisle toward the rear of the plane. Each step took her farther from the job she'd known and nearer to the humbling journey of understanding the true cost of underestimating someone's worth. And as she passed, every passenger saw the fallen star of first class. No longer a beacon of top-tier service, but a reminder that real authority often springs from the quietest of places. Monica Blake had barely made it back to the front of the cabin before the intercom pinged again. She straightened her uniform coat, smoothing imaginary wrinkles across her stomach. She'd thought the worst was behind her, having read her own suspension, relinquished her duties, and watched Haley Tran take over. But the hush that fell over the first-class cabin told her otherwise. Something new was imminent. "Cabin crew, please stand by," Captain Johnson's calm, measured voice announced. "Protocol 9, Addendum, activation of owner's directive pending." Behind Monica, silver champagne flutes trembled on the carts as attendants froze. The rows of thigh-high bulkheads glowed softly in the low cabin lighting. Every passenger's head turned toward the cockpit door. Monica's heart pounded. She could taste salt on her lips. She clenched her fists at her sides, fighting to keep them from trembling. A boycott of her own anxiety. Moments later, an additional monitor slid down from the ceiling near the forward service station. Monica recognized the polished grain of its frame, the same screens they used for safety demos, now repurposed. Gabriel Knox's face appeared first, stern, suit perfectly pressed. Before another window opened beside it, there, illuminated by the screen's glow, sat Eleanor Chase. Her cobalt eyes met Monica's through the glass of the monitor with unflinching calm. Monica drew in a shuddering breath. She bowed her head, unable to look away. On screen, Eleanor's voice emerged, soft, authoritative. "Monica Blake," she said, each word clipped as though carved from marble. "I do not want you removed from your livelihood over one mistake. You will not be fired." Monica exhaled in relief, only to stare in disbelief as Eleanor continued. "However," she added, "you will serve me for the remainder of this flight." A stunned silence rippled down the cabin. Passengers exchanged astonished glances, some mouths falling open behind delicate hands. Monica's throat constricted. She felt the blood drain from her face, leaving her skin icy. Eleanor's gaze flicked away briefly, then returned to Monica's image. "You will serve me," she repeated, voice steady, "in the very cabin where you stripped me of my dignity. You will bring me what I request, exactly as you once refused me. And you will do so silently until the moment we touch down in Los Angeles." Monica's body trembled. "Ma'am," she managed, voice strangled. Eleanor lifted a single finger and shook her head. "No words, just action. I expect you to understand the gravity of this directive." She nodded once, then the screens blinked off, leaving the cabin bathed in warm light once more. Monica's knees felt weak. She pressed both palms to the cart in front of her, fighting the urge to collapse. Every pair of eyes was on her. Magnates in silk ties, diplomats in tailored jackets. The tech mogul who had once invited her to sit, now silently watching the theater unfold. Haley appeared at Monica's elbow, eyes wide. "Monica? Are you okay?" Monica managed a tight nod. She lowered her gaze to the wind-swept clouds, visible through the oval windows. I'll do it," she whispered. Her voice caught in her throat, but the resolve beneath it was hardening. The cabin attendants exchanged glances. Haley bowed her head slightly, as if offering silent support. Monica felt a prick of gratitude, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed on her chest. She stood, took a decisive breath, and stepped toward the service trolley. The first request, she knew, would set the tone. She forced herself to look at the passenger in seat 2C, a wealthy industrialist, sipping tea. Taking a tray of soft rolls in her gloved hand, She approached him with a practiced smile that felt like a mask. "Sir, would you care for fresh rolls?" she asked, voice gentle. He looked up in surprise, then nodded. "Thank you," he said. "But I'm fine." Monica nodded and moved on, barely registering the muffled murmur as she passed row after row. Each step was a silent promise. She would comply. She would atone. At Eleanor's seat, Monica paused. The owner of the airline sat erect, cane resting beside her armrest like an extension of her authority. Monica reminded herself of the broken cane shaft now stowed in baggage hold. Another silent witness to Monica's mistake. She drew the Chardonnay bottle from the cart, carefully placed it in the silver ice bucket, and approached Eleanor. Her hands shook so slightly the crystal caught the light. Setting the bucket in its stand, she turned and produced 2 glasses. She poured the golden liquid in a slow, deliberate arc. Eleanor's eyes never wavered. "Your wine, ma'am," Monica said, voice small. Eleanor accepted the glass with one hand, lifted it to her lips, and sipped. "Thank you," she said, soft enough that Monica had to lean in to hear. "Now, a glass of still water, please. And the salmon salad? Light on the dressing." Monica inhaled. "Of course, ma'am." She retrieved the water, filled the glass cleanly, then plucked a pre-prepared salad from the cart. The lettuce crisp, the salmon glistening, everything the menu had promised. She arranged the tray on Eleanor's fold-out table. Every passenger bore witness. Monica felt her cheeks burn. A flash of regret cut through her embarrassment. Anger at herself for ever having let things escalate so far. But there was no place for excuses. She gave Eleanor a respectful nod, turned and resumed her circuit. Every refill, every crumb removal, every polite "yes, ma'am," delivered under the watchful eyes of those she'd inadvertently summoned. Row 1D caught her eye. A family of 4, mother, father, 2 daughters. The father offered a sympathetic glance. The mother whispered to her eldest, pointing discreetly at Monica. "Mistakes happen, but look how she's owning it." Monica forced herself to notice. Small kindness in a sea of judgment. She pressed on, balancing the tray cart through the narrow aisle, mindful of the passengers who had once treated her as an equal steward. Now she was something else. Part contrite servant, part cautionary exhibit. Yet through it all, she moved with precision, intent on fulfilling Eleanor's directive flawlessly. An hour in, Monica found herself glancing at the cabin clock. 30 minutes until descent. Her body ached, her pride felt shredded, but in her chest a strange steadiness had taken root. Each served drink, each tedious task chipped away at her assumptions until something new took hold. Empathy. She turned back to Eleanor's seat for another round. Before she could speak, Eleanor raised a hand. "No more for now," she said. "Thank you." Monica nodded and paused. For the first time since the incident, she dared to look Eleanor in the eye without fear. "Thank you, ma'am," Monica replied, voice clearer than it had been in hours. "Thank you for the opportunity." Eleanor's lips curved in the barest hint of a smile, as though pleased by Monica's words. Then she turned away, folding her hands and gazing out at the endless blue beyond the window. Monica moved on, leaving behind a moment of fragile understanding. The rest of the flight would follow the same quiet flow, requests and responses, humility in action. She would serve until landing, not as punishment, but as the most humbling lesson she had ever received. And for that, she would be profoundly grateful. Monica Blake had spent the last hour gliding up and down the first-class aisle, delivering water, clearing dishes, and suppressing the tight knot of shame twisting in her stomach. The cabin's low hum of conversation felt worlds away from the boardroom-style tension she'd endured earlier. Now, Passengers reclined in soft leather seats, tended by Haley and the other attendants, who whispered about the owner's protocol in hushed tones, but every set of eyes still flicked Monica's way, as if they were waiting for the next scene in a drama that had begun at gate A7. At this point, she moved almost mechanically, set down a fresh blanket, offered a chocolate-covered strawberry, each action precise, professional. She'd learned to anticipate needs. She'd prided herself on reading micro-expressions. Today, though, every request from Eleanor Chase was a reminder of how little Monica truly understood other people's experiences. As she approached Eleanor's seat for the umpteenth time, the cabin's soft lighting played across Eleanor's calm face. The ivory handle of the restored cane gleamed beside her. Monica offered the final dish, an impeccable creme brulee, but instead of speaking, she simply stood by, waiting for the next instruction. In that pause, the cabin seemed to hold its collective breath. Eleanor lifted her eyes from the dessert, observing Monica with a steady gaze. "You've served me well, Miss Blake," she said softly, her voice gentle but carrying a weight that stopped Monica's pulse. "But before we land, there's something I'd like to ask you." Monica's fingers stilled around the tray. She nodded, throat tight. "Yes, ma'am?" Eleanor leaned forward just enough that only Monica could hear. "Have you ever had anyone ask you if you truly belong here?" She paused, letting the question hang in the calm air. "Have you ever wondered whether you deserve this station, this uniform, these privileges?" Monica's breath caught. She blinked, as though trying to clear her mind of static. All around her, passengers continued their conversations, oblivious to this private moment that felt louder than any announcement. Monica's pulse pounded in her ears. She realized she had nothing ready to say. She shook her head almost imperceptibly. No one's ever asked me that." Her voice was so quiet she worried Eleanor might not have heard. Eleanor's gaze softened, but there was no pity, only clarity. "You've spent your career judging others," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "You decide who fits the part, who looks the part before you even greet them. But have you ever paused to question yourself?" She tapped the edge of the tray table gently. "When you told me I didn't belong in first class, what image did you see? And why did you assume you were the one to decide?" Monica's stomach lurched. In that moment, her world condensed into two faces, Eleanor's composed calm and her own reflection in the window glass. Tight-lipped, uniform crisp, heart pounding. She pictured herself at gate A7, holding the flashlight over the boarding pass, scanning the gold foil for irregularities, the casual cruelty of her words that had shattered more than just a cane. Monica swallowed hard, struggling to find the humility Eleanor demanded. She thought of every passenger she'd steered, every subtle glance she'd thrown at a frayed hem or a discount brag bag. She remembered the satisfaction of a job well done, of mastering the art of service. But she'd never paused to consider whether her judgments were fair or informed. She'd worn her uniform like armor, believing that professionalism meant perfection, never recognizing the prejudice she'd hidden beneath shot-pin stripes. Tears pricked at the corners of Monica's eyes. She clenched her fists around the edge of the tray, cart, to steady herself. I've always believed I was doing my job, making sure only those who paid for this cabin got what they paid for, she admitted, voice raw. I never thought I was judging who was worthy. I thought I was doing what was right. Eleanor inclined her head as if accepting that answer but also weighing it. Right and wrong are different things, she said quietly. It's easy to hide behind rules, but sometimes what feels right for you isn't just or kind. Monica's shoulders trembled. She swallowed, trying to speak again, but found her throat too tight. A hush settled over the cabin as a flight attendant in row 1D closed her magazine and watched intently. The atmosphere was electric but gentle, as if everyone sensed this wasn't about punishment. It was a reckoning. Finally, Monica nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. She pressed a finger to her lips, remembering Eleanor's directive, no words, only action. But this time, words felt necessary. She leaned closer, voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I am so sorry." Eleanor offered a small, knowing smile, an unspoken forgiveness mixed with a challenge. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she straightened, picking up her glass of water. "There's no more I need," she said calmly. "We'll finish this flight in peace." Monica stepped back, wiping at her eyes with the corner of her sleeve. She had served the creme brulee, but it was this exchange that felt like the sweetest, most vital taste of all, a morsel of truth. As she moved away to resume her duties, she realized the question had done more than shatter her assumptions. It had opened a door inside herself. The cabin returned to its soft murmur, but nothing felt the same. Monica navigated the aisle with lighter steps, her heart aching but resolute. She knew that by the time they touched down, she would carry a lesson far beyond any customer service manual, a lesson about humility, empathy, and the quiet power of asking the right question at the right moment. Monica Blake eased the service cart to a stop just beyond row 2C, her hand still trembling from the exchange she'd shared with Eleanor Chase moments earlier. The cabin lights glowed softly overhead, casting gentle shadows on the plush cream seats. Outside the window, wisps of cloud drifted against a pale cerulean sky. Los Angeles, still an hour away. In that quiet, suspended moment, Monica felt every ounce of her carefully constructed confidence slipping away. She set the cart down and straightened, smoothing the front of her uniform as though she could iron out the guilt etched into her expression. Passengers continued their hushed conversations, a financier debating market shifts, a celebrity's retinue debating dinner reservations, a diplomat poring over paperwork. They all thought this was just another long-haul flight. They didn't know their lead attendant was wrestling with something far weightier than seat assignments or meal preferences. A soft cough drew Monica's gaze to the front of the cabin. Eleanor Chase sat poised in 1A, her repaired cane resting perfectly vertical beside her. In the golden glow, Eleanor's silver hair looked like spun sunlight. She lifted one pale hand in a small gesture, just enough to catch Monica's eye. No words were spoken, but that tilt of her hand said clearly, "Come here." Monica took a steadying breath and approached. She knelt beside Eleanor's seat, hands clasped in her lap, trying to steady the rapid thump of her heart. She opened her mouth to speak, but Eleanor raised a finger to her lips. Monica swallowed, eyes flicking to the passengers now watching from behind the dividers. Then she met Eleanor's gaze, bracing herself. "No one asked me to quit when you broke my cane," Eleanor began quietly, voice gentle but firm. "I could have demanded you be fired on the spot. You know that, don't you?" She tapped her cane once for emphasis. "But I believe in giving people a chance to face their mistakes." Monica's throat tightened. She blinked back tears. "Ma'am, she started, voice ragged. But Eleanor held up her other hand, interrupting. "Listen to me," Eleanor said softly. "I'm not asking you to leave this airline. I'm asking you to understand what you did and how it felt." She paused, and her next words cut through the quiet cabin like a spotlight. "You humiliated me in public. You made me feel unwelcome in a place I had every right to be, but more than that, you believed you had the right to judge me by my appearance." Monica closed her eyes, remembering the harsh flashlight beam on Eleanor's ticket, the snap of the cane under Monica's hand. Shame welled inside her like a storm surge. She licked her lips, voice shaking. I never thought about it that way. Eleanor inclined her head, a gesture of both compassion and challenge. That's exactly why I want you to stay. Because I don't want you to stop caring about your job. I want you to start caring about people, not just their tickets, but their stories, their struggles. She sat back, eyes never leaving Monica's. If you don't change, Ms. Blake, someone else will suffer for your inability to see beyond a uniform. The words settled heavily on Monica's shoulders. She drew in a breath and met Eleanor's gaze head-on. I understand, she whispered. A single tear slid down her cheek. She glanced at the other passengers, who watched in respectful silence. No one sneered, no one laughed. Even the most discerning VIPs sat still, as though bearing witness to a private confession. Monica rose to her feet, voice steadier now. Ma'am, I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve any of that, and I promise I'll never let it happen again. She paused, then glanced at the empty service cart. May I clear this tray for you? Eleanor gave a small nod. Yes, please. Monica moved with renewed purpose, stripping the tray of its remnants, folding napkins gently, and clearing away the silverware with meticulous care. Each motion was imbued with sincerity. No longer the rote choreography of a perfected routine, but acts of genuine service. She laid a fresh napkin beside the tray table and set out a small plate of fresh fruit, Evelyn's favorite, plump blackberries and bright orange melon slices. As she worked, Haley Tran glanced over, her expression soft with approval. Monica caught her eye and offered a grateful, almost shy smile. Haley returned it with a nod, then discreetly moved on to serve the row behind. Monica finished at Eleanor's seat and met her eyes again. Here you are, ma'am, she said quietly. She gave a respectful bow of her head. Thank you for teaching me what it truly means to serve. Eleanor's lips curved into the gentlest of smiles. Thank you for listening, she replied. Now, let's enjoy the rest of this flight. Monica stepped back, heart thudding, as passengers resumed their own discussions. Some smiling quietly at the transformation they'd witnessed, others simply savoring their meals. The cabin's atmosphere shifted from tension to something softer, more humane. Monica returned to the service cart and took a moment to look out the window at the endless sky. Below, the clouds drifted peacefully, oblivious to the drama in the cabin. Above, the plane hummed confidently toward its destination. Inside, something fundamental had changed. Her uniform still fit, her name badge lay folded in her apron pocket. But beneath the crisp fabric, Monica felt a new understanding taking root. That true professionalism meant more than flawless performance. It meant empathy. It meant seeing every passenger, especially the ones you think you know, through the lens of their humanity. As the plane began its initial descent toward Los Angeles, Monica prepared herself for the final chapter of this journey. She would face the aftermath of Protocol 9, the debrief in the cockpit, and the long road of rebuilding trust. But in this moment, she felt a quiet clarity, an inner calm born from confronting her own shortcomings and choosing to grow. Monica returned the cart to the galley and took a steadying breath. The hum of the engines vibrated softly beneath her feet. She pressed her palm against the warm bulkhead and closed her eyes for a heartbeat. Then she opened them, squared her shoulders, and returned to Eleanor's side. May I get you anything else before landing, ma'am? She asked, voice calm and sincere. Eleanor met her gaze and nodded lightly. A cup of tea, please. And a smile. Monica allowed herself a small, genuine grin. Of course, ma'am. And with that, she moved forward. No longer a frightened enforcer of rules, but a humbled flight attendant transformed by the power of quiet understanding. The landing gear rattled as the A350 dipped toward LAX's runway, and Monica Blake felt her heart thump against her ribs. The cabin lights dimmed to signal descent, and passengers clicked their seatbelts into place. Eleanor Chase sat poised in 1A, Kane resting beside her, eyes calm as the city lights of Los Angeles emerged beneath a twilight sky. Moments after the wheels kissed the tarmac, Captain Johnson's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Los Angeles. Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened until the seatbelt sign is off." Monica gathered her folded napkins and returned the service cart, her uniform spotless, but her pride irrevocably altered. Once the sign flickered off, Monica received a discreet summons from First Officer Ramirez. "Ms. Blake, Mr. Knox requests you at operations." She steadied herself and followed the co-pilot through the jet bridge, each step echoing in her mind. In a private lounge near the terminal, Gabriel Knox and Captain Johnson waited. Knox's gaze was solemn but not unforgiving. He swiveled his tablet to display a formal notice. "Suspension lifted. Enroll in 6-month professional development and customer empathy program. Completion required for reinstatement." Monica's throat tightened. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. Knox offered a small, encouraging nod. "Eleanor believes in second chances," he said quietly. "Make the most of it." Stepping back into the terminal, Monica spotted Eleanor approaching. The airline owner stopped, smiled gently, and handed Monica her restored cane, brand new handle and shaft. "You served well after all," Eleanor said softly. Monica accepted it, voice thick. "Thank you, ma'am. I won't let you down." As they parted ways, Monica felt a surge of hope. The flight had ended, but her journey toward true service and genuine understanding was only beginning. Monica stepped off the jet bridge into the soft glow of late afternoon California sun, her uniform still crisp, but her spirit forever altered. Passengers bustled past with rolling suitcases and smartphones held high, unaware that the most transformative journey had just concluded within this very aircraft. Monica paused, turning back for one last look at the sleek fuselage of the Aerolux A350 before it taxied toward the gate. Across the tarmac, Eleanor Chase's chauffeured car waited, black leather and tinted windows reflecting the runway lights. Monica watched as Eleanor's silver hair and tailored coat stepped gracefully into the back seat. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met. A warm nod from Eleanor, a mix of gratitude and resolve in Monica's own gaze. No words passed between them, but everything had been said. As the car pulled away, Monica exhaled, feeling weight lift from her shoulders. She clutched the restored ivory-handled cane in her hand, both a reminder of her failure and a symbol of her growth. The wind carried distant echoes of aircraft engines, and she realized that, like a flight's final descent into calm, her own journey toward understanding had only just begun. She turned and walked toward baggage claim, each step imbued with quiet confidence. Memories of the gate confrontation, the broken cane, the hush of the cabin when Protocol 9 was announced, all of it replayed like a vivid tapestry. But Monica knew those moments had sharpened her empathy, awakened her compassion for people she once judged without thought. By the time she reached the terminal exit, Monica's eyes were clear and determined. She would return to Aerolux with a renewed purpose, to train with humility, to serve with sincerity, and to ensure that no passenger ever felt overlooked or dismissed again. Behind her, the illuminated letters on the departure board spelled endless possibilities and a promise that true redemption lies not in punishment, but in genuine change. Monica stepped into the flow of arriving travelers, ready to embrace the lessons learned at 34,000 feet and to carry them forward. wherever her path might lead.